Welcome, members of the public, welcome staff. Mr. Ross, if you could just, that's great. Thank you. Welcome to your regular council meeting of June the 2nd. It is odd for us to have a meeting on the first Wednesday of June. So for those of you, I just thought I would explain why the June schedule is different than the other months. And that's because normally on the second Wednesday of the month, the Lake Simcoe Conservation Foundation always has a very large fundraiser. And for those members who wish to go, we switched the meeting to the first Wednesday. Of course, that hasn't happened this year or last year, but the schedule remains the same. So that's why I thought I would let you know that. So I would let you know also that these meetings are open to the public and being live streamed, and to ensure that your microphone is muted when you're not speaking. Public comments made during this meeting are both audio and video recorded and shall form part of the record, which will be retained according to the town's retention bylaw. And if you want more information about that bylaw, please feel free to contact the clerk's office. And if I could ask, if you have your cell phone close to you as well, if you could please put that on silent, that would be wonderful. I'd like to start this evening with a short statement followed by a moment's silence. This past weekend, the bodies of 215 children as young as 3 years old were found in an unmarked grave at a former residential school in British Columbia. This is just one school of 200 with 215 children, and there are more than 130 residential schools that operated in Canada, and many children are still missing. The last residential school did not close until 1996. The town of Innisfil has joined communities across Canada in lowering our flags for 215 hours, 1 hour for each child who lost their life. We also mourn the lives of those who have never been found and stand in solidarity with the Tecumloops, Tsawapan First Nation, and all survivors of the residential school system who have been forced to relive their trauma as a result of this heartbreaking discovery. As we reflect on these events, we are reminded that yet again of the trauma of colonization and the importance of educating everyone on the 94 calls to action outlined in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. The month of June is National Indigenous Month, and I strongly encourage residents, staff, and members of council to take this time to learn more about residential schools and the harmful legacy of colonization. Colonialism. You can take additional action by placing an orange ribbon, teddy bear, or pair of shoes outside of your home, or donating to a local Indigenous organization. We will be sharing resource links and book lists through this month, so please monitor the town and library's social media channels for access. I now ask that you please stand and join me for a moment of silence for the 215 children that didn't get to go home, and every person who had to endure the residential school system, because every child matters. Thank you, everyone. Please be seated. We will now go to our open forum for this evening. We have nobody who has signed up for open forum this evening. And next would be the approval of the agenda. We did have one item that we'd like to add, and we will require a 2/3 majority vote for the procedural bylaw for the notice of motion for Councillor Ices to be put forward on this evening's agenda. There'll be no discussion on this item. It will just be noticed, and the discussion would take place at the next council meeting. So is there a mover and a seconder for this? I see Councillor Donna Orsatti and Councillor Alex Waters. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Next, we will have disclosures of interest. Is there anyone who has a pecuniary interest or conflict on tonight's agenda? I'm seeing no hands, but if one becomes apparent to you, please let us know at that time and we'll deal with it appropriately. Next is number 5, presentations and petitions. And we're very fortunate this evening to have members of our Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee before us. It is Accessibility Week this week. Or was that last week? No, I think it's this week. Anyway, I'm sure they'll let us know. And so we look forward to hearing and getting our annual update from our Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee. Whenever you're ready, if you'd please turn on your video and unmute yourself, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Davidson, members of council, staff, and the public. My name is Hilary Mallet, and I am the Vice Chair of your Innisfil Advisory Committee. Members of your Accessibility Committee, past and present, have enjoyed supporting and advocating for the town of Innisfil for a barrier-free community for nearly 20 years, and we are proud of the accomplishments and achievements. In recognition of National Accessibility Week, which is May the 30th to June the 5th of this year, we are proud to provide this annual report to council. Your current accessibility members are Councillor Carolyn Payne, who is Chair, Joe Winston, Robert Davies, Carol Ann Browning, Kim Boss, John Gray, Rod Boynton, myself, Hilary Mallet as Vice Chair, and of course, our indispensable support staff, Kim Creamer. During the past 13 months, your committee has continued to meet virtually through Zoom meetings, and we continuously explore and participate in virtual educational conferences, workshops, and seminars to keep informed on accessibility and barrier-free related topics. We look forward to attending in person when it is safe to do so. With the current pandemic, our very popular Breaking Down Barriers awareness program, which is held at local elementary schools, has unfortunately been put on hold since March of 2020. The committee, however, has continued to work on creating an information program package and an evaluation form, and we will be reaching out to local schools in order to share this information with the hopes that we can continue this valuable program with our youth. At this time, I would like to ask one of our other members, John Gray, to speak with you.
Mute my audio. Alt+A.
Hello, my name is John Gray. I'm a member of your Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I'm living with low vision. You can't see me. I'm the blank screen in front of you. But don't worry, that's okay. I can't see you either. With the help of low vision technology, I've prepared a short statement for you.
In March 2021, it was brought to your Accessibility Committee's attention that the federal government had announced funding cuts for the Center for Equitable Library Services, CELA, and the National Network for Equitable Library Services, NNELS. These services provide the necessary reading materials for our residents and people with print disabilities, including those with vision loss, learning disabilities, and physical disabilities. The IAAC supports this service and sent a letter to MP John Brassard requesting that the federal government immediately restore this valuable funding, as it would have a lasting impact on our community and library services. The committee was pleased to be a part of having this funding restored and will continue to support these services in their future endeavors to keep their funding.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. Your committee conducts accessibility consultations on town-owned and operated facilities, which ensures that the accessibility standards are met. This service will once again return once it is safe to do so. Your IAAC is an active group, and we review and comment on all provincial accessibility standards as they are provided, and we provide input and comment on the town's multi-year accessibility plan. We are pleased to advise engineering staff of updates, and we know they seek the committee's input to ensure accessibility standards are met when creating, replacing, and/or refurbishing our local parks. We are extremely pleased to work closely with Meredith Goodwin, Capital Project Manager, on the creation of an all-inclusive accessible park that has been approved within the Sleeping Lion Parkland. At this time, I would like to ask Rod Boynton to speak with you.
Good evening, Council. The IAAC receives regular updates on improvements within the community, and we're very pleased to be part of the creation of the new accessibility ramp connecting Simcoe Boulevard and Adams Road, which has become a vital connection point for this area. The committee looks forward to seeing the mobility-themed artwork that will showcase this all-inclusive ramp. Another exciting accessible connection is the trail that links Jack Crescent through a pedestrian bridge to Goodfellow Public School. Planning staff who are well-trained to conduct site plan reviews worked with your committee in 2020 and successfully created a site plan accessibility review checklist, which ensures that accessibility standards and designs are for commercial and public buildings conform to AODA standards and the Public Building Code. In 2020, with the assistance of library staff, your committee created the Accessible Customer Service Booklet, a guide for Innisfil service providers. This helpful guide is part of the ongoing educational pieces created to assist our community in becoming an accessible town. The accessible business video, titled How to Make Your Business More Accessible, was also created to assist businesses in reaching the entire market available to them. We are pleased to report that these links have been shared in the Innisfil Accelerates e-newsletter this month in recognition of National Accessibility Week. Your accessibility committee also ensures awareness proclamations are recognized by the town and council on an annual basis. When this committee was created almost 20 years ago, accessibility was non-existent. Life for 15% of our population was made even more difficult by our world's indifference. People with difficulties and disabilities struggle to exist in a world that did not want to acknowledge them. For us, who have resided in Innisfil for a longer period of time, we've seen the struggles to make change. Eyes would roll at any proposal to do things differently. I'm happy to report that through the vision and policy changes legislated by the province of Ontario and the hard work of many accessibility committees, our world has really changed. I believe that our IAAC, current and previous councils with vision, and dedicated cooperative staff have transformed the town of Innisfil into a place that everyone, yes, everyone, can be proud to call home. On behalf of your Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee, we're proud to report our future is very bright. Thank you, council and staff, for your continued support of your IAAC committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Rod, Hillary, Carol, and John, and all the members of the IAAC. that work very hard and have been for many years. And I always think back this time about Marguerite Papin, that she was part of our committee for so long and put so much work into it as well. Questions and comments for members of the committee? Councillor Orsatti.
Just want to thank the committee for their dedication and commitment and hard work. And when you spoke, Rod, about the Adam Simcoe Road ramp, accessible ramp, you know, there's a lot of resistance to it because I think it's understanding, but it's providing the same mobility to everyone. Everyone deserves the same right as everyone else for accessibility. I had the pleasure of being over there and seeing a young mother pushing a stroller. And I asked how she liked the ramp and did she use it very often. She said that it was amazing. It just made her life easier getting from one area to another. And she was so grateful for it. So I wanted to share that positive feedback and to also see a gentleman riding his bike and taking it along the link as well. So I think it's being widely used and sometimes the resistance and then afterwards it's the applause. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Orsatti. Other questions or comments for the Accessibility Committee? Seeing none, I did have one question. So it was, I think, Hillary that talked a lot about the changes that your committee has had to do during the pandemic and things that you were used to doing that you could no longer do, like the school visits and the site. And I would ask, is there anything, has there been anything come out of it positive? Is there anything that, you know, through this new technology? I mean, I have to tell you that leaving council sometimes as late as midnight or 11 o'clock in the evening on a February evening and then scraping my car off and driving white knuckling all the way because it's a snowstorm. Now, you know, I just click off my computer and I'm 5 steps to my bedroom. So that's been an advantage for me. And I'm wondering if there's been any advantages for the Accessibility Committee, or is it all been more the struggle of not being able to get together?
Well, Mary, in answer to both your questions, it is a struggle, and yet we have been able to do more. I think we've all become quite adept with the help of Kim Creamer in holding our Zoom meetings. And unfortunately, like yourself, we've not really had to worry or struggle with late night meetings. Ours are at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and they're usually over by 3, so we're okay. But it's brought us closer together, and I think it's enabled us to share more as to what we're doing, what's going on. And, you know, thank you, Donna Orsatti, for your comments, because obviously we were very, very involved in that ramp, and there were differences of opinions and what have you. But I think it's given us the opportunity to be more vocal with each other on a, I don't want to say confrontational level, but an easier level with the Zoom. And again, we can turn our computers off. We're all in contact with each other, and we're really, really hoping, wishing that we're going to get back to meet in person soon. I know we all desperately miss our Breaking Down Barriers program, because that to me is just a phenomenal program that we introduced with the youngsters in the elementary school, and so beneficial. But I don't think it's really dampened our spirits by any manner of means. We're still very enthusiastic and encouraged by our abilities to meet via Zoom. And yeah, I think we've done very well thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. That shows a good committee, right? You're able.
Yes, it does. Yep.
And congratulations on Innisfil Accessibility Week. I know that there's going to be a lot of promotion and push out from our communications, both at the library and through the town. So looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, then I would ask a mover and a seconder that the annual Innisfil Accessibility Advisory Committee update be received. Councillor Waters and Councillor Orsatti, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you so much. You're welcome. If you haven't got anything else to do, you can stay on and watch the rest of our meeting. Or I guess now that the Leafs are not playing anymore, I guess people have more time in the evenings. But I just wanted to thank you. You're welcome to stay on, or you can leave us, whichever you prefer.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on our item is delegations, and we had no delegations this evening. So next is updates from County Council, municipal associations, conservation authorities, and emergency operations center updates. I'm going to start with EOC so I don't forget it, as I sometimes do, and I'll call on Mr. Keogh.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good evening, everyone. Happy to bring this EOC update to you, which I have to admit appears to be starting off pretty positive, certainly more positive than the Leafs outcome there. So from our partners at the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit, we are hearing that cases are continuing to decline locally and provincially, likely attributed to vaccine uptake in our hotspot areas. SMDHU is starting plans to discontinue community or mass clinics starting in the fall and shift to a steady state immunization model from primary care providers. Great response we're seeing from vaccinations for youth. 9,000 individuals between 12 and 17 years old have booked their first dose. And we're waiting and expecting to hear more from the province soon about booking second doses on an earlier timeline, hoping for July. And at the same time, gearing up to ramp up the campaign on vaccine hesitancy. Our summer program guide is being released this week for programs planned for virtual and or outdoors based on the regulations. Summer camps are also planning to start in July. Again, just waiting for more guidance from the province. On our enforcement front, an update on our provincial ministry blitz that took place at the beginning of May. Out of 13 site visits, we can tell you that there was 1 ticket and 2 verbal cautions. There were some calls over the long weekend regarding gatherings, and municipal law staff responded with South Simcoe Police safely. Our customer service team is taking appointments as needed while continuing to provide virtual and digital service and communication. We're still waiting for stage 1 reopening guidance on issuing marriage licenses. Another extra friendly reminder that 2020 resident permit passes are valid until 2022. So if you're a resident and you need a pass, we ask you to get in touch with a Town of Innisfil customer service just to book an appointment so you can pick up your pass at Town Hall. And lastly, of course, as we heard today, there will be no in-person school until September. So school is out for summer. That likely means that our Innisfil Idea Lab and Library and Leisure Services team are gearing up and looking at more offerings for kids this summer. That's everything.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Keogh? Thank you, Mr. Keogh. I put on Facebook yesterday that Town of Innisfil, so the comments Mr. Keogh was making were for Simcoe Muskoka as a region. Here in Innisfil, we're about almost 51% of the population is vaccinated, and we're, for the first time in about almost 2 months, we have below 100 active cases. So I think we're about 86 active cases today. So we're definitely going in the right direction. Thank you, Mr. Keogh. Other committees or anything anybody would like to report on? Since we were here last week, there's not that much. We haven't had a county council meeting since the last time we were here, but I will tell you that on June the 8th, County Council will be holding a public meeting to introduce everybody on what a municipal comprehensive review is and how it will affect us here in Simcoe County and more specifically in Innisfil. And also the county is having a conference, a virtual of course, on June the 16th. It's half the day, 9 till noon. And Cassie Campbell is going to be the keynote speaker, so Olympic gold medal hockey player. And it is free for any councillor in Simcoe County to join. So if you haven't registered yet, you could let staff know. They'll be happy to do that for you. So that's it for updates. So next we'll move on to the consent list. So we'll move through these items, and anyone who wants something pulled, please let it be known, and we'll discuss it further in committee of the whole. If you just have a quick comment or a question, no need to pull it unless it's going to develop into further debate, and then we'll move it into committee. So the first item is the adoption of the council meeting minutes from May the 26th. B1, the Innisfil Heritage Advisory Committee Report 0521 dated May the 6th. I would just point out that the original agenda came out without the recommendations and the motions that are before you this evening. So with the passing of this, we'd be passing those 3 recommendations from the committee should this go through. Councillor Arsati.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a thank to the Heritage Committee for the detailed information that they provide especially on the request for the non-designated listed properties. So it really helps council, and especially if there is photos, because I'm always checking the address to take a look at the building, but it's very helpful to council members. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Councillor. Not seeing any hands, then B2, that was the School Zone Traffic Safety Committee meeting. Questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Davidson. Sorry, Deputy Mayor.
No problem. Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I'm glad to see this come forward, and I'm glad to see the comment about the flashing red light on the north-south of 20th Side Road. I think I told you a few months ago, I almost got taken out there by somebody who drove straight north through the intersection. So this is great. And I know there's a school bus stop there, and a lot of the residents that meet with their kids there have had a lot of concerns. So this is a great step in the right direction. I do have just a quick question. Because this intersection is shared with Barrie, I'm not sure how we'll move forward in the future when this subdivision gets built there. So I think this is a good interim thing at the moment. We'll see where we go in the future. But thank you very much for the committee for putting that up there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bowman, did you have any comments about that, or do we want to just take that away?
No comments at this time, Your Worship. I'll take that away though. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arsati.
I just to mention, because I know from probably a lot of councillors get this as well, a lot of requests by residents as to what's happening and what areas, stop signs and, pedestrian crossings at any time. When the traffic safety meetings are being held, the public may go on, pull the agenda. They'll see the full agenda and a tracking list that shows many of the items such as speed enforcement cameras, the progress, and where they're happening. So there is a lot of work happening behind the scenes, and answers, we can't put a lot of things in place without the data. So data is required for a lot of it. And just reminding residents that if they do have concerns, the place not to solve them is on Facebook, but to contact customer service and get the data in there so that the Traffic Safety Committee can deal with them.
Thanks for that, Councillor. Yeah, and that's an important point. And also that the School Zone and Traffic Safety Committee, it's a triage system. So it's just like if you go into the emergency room, just because you're first through the door doesn't mean you're first to see a doctor. We deal with the places that have the worst speeding and the most vehicles doing over the speed limit. We deal with those first and work our way through the list. But for sure, Councillor Arsati's points are very well taken. Quite often we'll hear from people that, there's been, I'll see 200 or 300 comments on Facebook, and I'll check with customer service and we've had, 2 inquiries or none. So it really is important to make sure that your issues are documented through our inquiry system. Seeing no other hands, we'll go to item C, C1. That's the accessory third dwelling units. I'm going to pull that for further discussion. Next is item C2, council compensation review. So anyone who's thinking about putting their name forward for next year, 2022 election, you can go online to find out what the compensation would be, because it won't be changed from the last 4 years. Councillor Arsati.
Thank you. Where would council be without my attendance, right? I don't want to pull this. I just want to ask a question of Ms. Toma in regards to the, for any residents or anyone, thinking of running in the election and they see this and the section on the ward boundary review. So the ward boundary review, I just wonder if you could give some information. People will probably be, they're concerned and they're interested, and they're going to be running for a specific ward or position in the town. And then there's going to be a ward review. And I'm just wondering if you could give some information as to when would that, if there was boundary changes, when would that come into effect?
Thank you. And through your worship, Councillor Asadi. A boundary review is scheduled to commence in January of 2023. The incoming council will be provided with an information report as to a schedule of public engagement regarding a boundary review. That would hopefully be completed by 2025, and that would be provided for the next election, for the next term of council after, which would be 2026. So there's a bit of time there for that. It would not affect incoming council, but it would affect them, that they would be participating in how the wards would look, whether they stay the same, whether they have the same complement of council members. That would be provided probably in 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. And of course, that decision will be made by the next council. So the next item was item C3, the annual review of the investment policy. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I don't need to pull this. As it was brought up in our audit committee meeting last week by former Councillor Pring, on page 61 of 124, we do need to change to bring your worship back to the town of Innisfil and out of the town of Huntsville. So I know they're moving to change that recommendation there, but we're welcoming you back to the town of Innisfil, and it'll be Huntsville's loss, I'm guessing.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Melanishin.
Yeah, through your worship, that was caught through the audit committee. That document will be re-signed and attached as appropriate.
Thanks. And for those watching, there was just, we did e-signatures, electronic signatures, and for some reason, my signature and Mr. Parkin's signature as the clerk are identified as being from the town of Huntsville instead of the town of Innisfil. So I'm not sure who signed for the town of Innisfil, but we'll get that fixed. Except unless, of course, it comes with a nice cottage, in which case it can stand. Thank you. Item C4, the community planning permit system on Purvis Street. Questions or comments? Seeing none. Then next we go to staff reports for information. The first one is the County of Simcoe Municipal Comprehensive Review update, item D1. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I know we're just receiving this as information, so there's no reason to pull it, but I just have a question, or maybe log a question with staff. In the staff report, it says that the local impact which should only be in Alcona that will be affected. I wonder if there's any concern on whether developers could try to utilize this method and try to justify their plans to the county and or possibly circumvent our official plan and our servicing plans to run pipes out of our planned urban growth areas to try and service their own properties. It's something that seems to leave a little bit of leeway, and I'm just wondering if staff are considering this or thinking about that. So whether it could circumvent our official plan and what we're trying to do as a community. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Deloy. Oh, sorry. Mary Nordstrom.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep, thank you through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Nicol. No, so the process of the MCR process, we're working together with the county in terms of looking at our settlement areas, with Alcona being the primary settlement area within which any growth allocation numbers, the growth allocation numbers that would be provided to us by which they're targeting end of this year, would primarily go there. But no, it would be a process within which staff are working together with the county and through a public process with council in terms of looking where additional growth should and be appropriately located based on servicing, based on the hierarchy within our official plan amendments. So it's not, there isn't an ability to circumvent. It is all being done very much through a public process in line with our OP and with the growth plan additional population numbers.
Thank you, Ms. Nordstrom. Any other questions or comments on item D1? And again, if any councillor is interested, I can provide you the link for the public meeting that's taking place on June the 8th at 10 a.m. if you'd like more information. Next is item D2, the 2020 investment report. Councillor Ices.
Thank you, Worship. I don't need to pull it. I just wanted to highlight the good work that staff's doing with our capital reserves and the money that we need for the future. As you can imagine, this public money is very restricted in where it can be invested, and in the report it goes over a lot of different strategies to get the most money that we can on our savings for investment in the future. So I just wanted to commend staff on that.
Thank you. Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I don't need to pull. I agree with Councillor Ices. The return on investment is amazing on this report. I know these investments are longer term plans and the markets will fluctuate, but I am so glad that staff brought this opportunity forward and council had the vision and embraced the concept to become a founding member of this investment group. And I think it's just going to benefit our community for years and years to come. So great work by staff to bring this to us. Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to council. It took some gumption, because if you recall, the time when we were deciding whether or not to be one of the founding members of the One Joint Investment Board was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And we were, at that point, everybody's wondering what's going to happen with markets. And here we were making this, big step. But I'll tell you, it's a decision that councils years from now will look back and thank us for, because we're doing more with the dollars that would normally be sitting there earning very small returns. We're making them work harder, which means we need to pull less out of the taxpayer. So great job. And I just want to recognize Mr. Melanishin. He is one of the one of the 2 municipal representatives in the entire province that sits on the Joint Investment Board. The rest of them are all, investors and bankers. And so we're just so fortunate, again, punching above our weight here in Innisfil. So we're not pulling that either. So then we'll move on to bylaws. So we have no bylaws this evening. We have no correspondence for action, and we have no correspondence for information. So with that, we will move to the items, the consent list for June the 2nd. And we have one item that was referred to Committee of the Whole. And a mover and a seconder, please, for that motion. Councillor Fowler and Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That's carried. And next, a motion to resolve to Committee of the Whole. And that's moved by Councillor Ices and Councillor Van Berkel. All those in favor? That is carried. So now we'll go to Committee of the Whole business items, which was item C1. And I pulled it, but if somebody else would move it, Councillor Nicol, is there a seconder? Councillor Van Berkel. And I saw Councillor Orsatti's card.
Thank you. Permission just now? Okay. Okay. Okay, sorry. Just because there was a little pause there. So you have your mover and seconder, and if I could start with questions, thank you, Your Worship. I've had residents contact me on this, and I just think that a little bit of clarification for a public that have not read the report or maybe been, on listening council when this was coming before, because I tend to, reach out. So I just wanted to run some questions by Ms. Nordstrom for clarification for our public, and if I see Ms. Nordstrom. So just as I've been trying to explain to residents, and I'm sure many other councillors, does the town of Innisfil have an option to not allow third dwelling units in Innisfil regarding Bill 108?
Ms. Nordstrom or Mr. Pentikainen, whoever wants to answer that one.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Dolan, to Councillor Orsatti's question, we are required under the changes under Bill 108 to implement the third dwelling unit permissions for ground-related housing in the town.
Okay, thank you. Follow up.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And then the other concern that, and it is mentioned in the report, the concern for, additional, street complaints for street parking, garbage, noise complaints. I know in the report, it also mentions only 6% of the 78 units. I imagine that this is actually Mr. Vickers or Ms. Nordstrom or Mr. Pentikainen that can answer this one. Do you foresee additional concerns with the third dwelling units that would require additional staff from a bylaw perspective? Because that was something that came up in our budget meetings. That was not an ask, but it was in the budget for additional bylaw officers. So I'm just wondering the impact that this would have on the staff that we currently have.
Mr. Vickers.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Orsatti. It's not anticipated that there would be additional bylaw staff required. There will be additional work for existing staff in terms of registering the third unit, because we have already a registry program for second units. So we expect that same program will just expand. So we'll have a little bit more work, but we think we can handle that.
And then if I may continue, Your Worship, just a little bit more latitude. Thank you. And Mr. Vickers, while you're here, just another question with regards to septic tanks. In my ward, I have a mix, all the new housing, of course, is on municipal services for water and waste. But those with septic tanks and some of the older streets and that, how through, I guess it's through the planning application to have a third dwelling unit that would be separate, not added on to the house, or to ensure that the size of the septic tank that they currently have is adequate? Like, is somebody inspect that, or how is that determined? Do they have to provide, like, maybe you could help me out with that.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Orsatti. Yeah, anytime there's a second apartment or an addition or a third unit added, through the building permit process, there is a verification of the sufficiency of services to allow the habitation of that additional space. So just like when we go to the third unit, there will be an evaluation that will be done for the services there. So it'll actually be hydro, water services, and sewage capacity. So for instance, we don't have the capacity in Cooktown, so we're not going to be able to facilitate third units in Cookstown. However, in other locales where they have a septic system, they may have to add to their system, or they may have to expand it, or it may turn out that they have a system that is of sufficient size already. So, but that determination will be made through the building permit process and the building inspectors.
Yeah, thank you, because I think that assures residents that are living in an area with other septic services that are beside that it may impact them as being their neighbor. Thank you. I'll let other councillors speak, and then I have some more questions later. Thank you.
Sorry, I'd be remiss if I didn't also add. So when the person wants to put on the third unit, it'll be incumbent upon them to demonstrate all of the requirements are fulfilled. So it'll be their obligation to retain a qualified designer that will be able to make those determinations on their behalf if they're not able to do so themselves. So that the demonstration comes to the building department in terms of building permit application that ticks off all the boxes that this is a green light for a third dwelling unit.
Thank you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have one question, and I also have a suggestion. The first question is again to Mr. Vickers, and it's a situation that I think he is well familiar with. When somebody builds a new facility or new building in Innisfil, they have to abide by the drainage restraints decided by the town. On an existing property, they have swales and it's basically an old system. So my question is, when somebody plans a third dwelling on an existing lot, which rules apply to that? Is it just they have to be able to use the existing swale system, or do they have to have a drainage plan that meets modern day standards?
Mr. Vickers?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Waters, they'll have to make a submission of a current lot grading plan. We make that evaluation. So if they've got 100 acres and they're putting something in the middle, you know, it's not going to affect anything. So, or it shouldn't. So through the process of the application, the plans examiners will make the determination as to whether or not they would require a fully designed lot grading plan, and so in some situations it will be applicable, in some it won't be necessary.
Okay. Thank you on that. Okay, that's good. My suggestion is that in Innisfil for affordability, that there are grants available from Simcoe County, I think up to $30,000, which help get these units built to keep them affordable for lower income families. And there was a discussion that Innisfil might participate on that in terms of providing grants to enhance this opportunity. My question is that if Innisfil is thinking that we want to become a town based on sustainability, would it be of interest to the town to offer a $5,000 grant for those people who do upgrades to their building envelope to make them much more energy efficient, or use less water, all those types of things from this, the typical Ontario building code. So a suggestion would be is that we offer something like that, and then we get a much better housing stock, and then has less operating costs for the owner. So it's a win-win situation in terms of meeting sustainability goals, but also reducing climate change, and also that homeowner is going to have longer term payback because he's going to have lower bills to pay for that unit. So, and it will also help in terms of keeping the rents down, because that money doesn't have to go for energy or water servicing. It can go basically to offering a lower rent to that homeowner. So just a suggestion that we might think of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. I don't think that that's something we can deal with today, but I know staff were taking notes on that. Can I ask Mr. Pentikainen or Ms. Nordstrom, is that funding from the county for the second dwelling or third dwelling unit still available?
Your Worship, last I spoke with the county, I believe there was a wait list for access to that funding, but it is, I believe it's renewed annually on a first come, first served basis.
Thank you. Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a point of clarification. It's in the report pretty clear, but I've had calls on it and maybe, people are watching. Third unit does not mean that if you have your house and somebody lives in your basement that you can put 2 more units on. Your basement is 1 unit and you can add another unit outside. Somebody said, well, I got, somebody's living in the house and I'm renting out my basement and I can put 2 more units out. That's 4 units, right?
Mr. Panikanen?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Berkel. Yes, you're correct. It's 3 dwelling units on the property in those various configurations that can be provided. So in that circumstance, having 2 units in addition to or 2 detached units in addition to the 2 units within the main living space, that wouldn't be provided or permitted.
Thank you. Then I explained it right to them.
Yeah, and I think the real issue that we have is whether or not that person living in the basement, it's a legal second dwelling. And we need to encourage people to make sure that they do register their second dwellings so that we can make sure that they're safe and that we have a proper registry of all of the second dwellings and make sure that they're following all the rules. Other questions or comments? Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Worship. On page 7, the one thing that stood out that actually makes me feel better about this is establishing a monitoring program and reporting back within 18 months. When it comes to a secondary property, secondary dwelling on the property, if someone does it in their basement, they can do it bit by bit, slowly. But if someone builds a house in their backyard, it's not something you can hide legally. It makes it very, very difficult to do in a surreptitious manner. I like the fact that they're recording the number of dwellings, bylaw infractions, the affordable housing. We're gathering information, and when we come back with this in 18 months, we can say this is working really well. Let's establish this and see how we can make it grow, because we're looking at intensification throughout Innisfil as opposed to urban sprawl. Or we can say, you know what, we gave it a shot, we tried it, we're going to have to crack down even harder and limit the number of houses that can be built as secondary units on the property. This is very clear, and it gives us feedback, which then we can have hard data instead of saying, well, what if? We will have actual numbers to work with, which I think is really, really good for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to bring up that there was an article in a Barrie newspaper, was it last week or the week before, about a third dwelling that was going in a standalone detached building in a backyard, and the neighborhood residents were opposed. And I reached out to Ms. Nordstrom and Mr. Pentikainen about that one. And Mr. Pentikainen, I wonder if you would just speak to the differences of what is in the Barrie zoning bylaw versus ours.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, the situation right now with Barrie's zoning provisions is that they have the size based on a lot coverage, so it can be up to 10% of the property, and there hasn't been a maximum size limit specified. So that has allowed for some potentially large structures, such as the one that was mentioned in the article. So with our maximum size for detached units being capped at that 50 square meter building footprint, so roughly about 500 square feet. So that will ensure that these structures that are detached, they're accessory to the main house, and they have much more minimal aesthetic impact as well.
Thank you. And also a 1.2 meter setback from your rear or side yards too. So they can't be right up next to someone else's property. Other questions or comments? Councillor Arsadi.
Thank you. Just adding on to Councillor Fowler's comments about staff coming back with a report to to council. And I just clarification for our public and assurance for them. When this comes back to council in 18 months, if there's tweaking that's needed or council's not happy with certain things that are happening, we would have that flexibility to have that discussion as to what changes need to be done moving forward. Is that correct, Ms. Nordstrom?
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Rosati's inquiry, yes. When we report back in 18 months, there is an ability, while the third dwelling units would still presumably be a requirement, the standards of within which we would be regulating those third dwelling units or accessory dwelling units could go through a further amendment at that time to the bylaw.
Thank you. And I think then that would address any concerns if people thought that, well, these are going to be short-term rental units, the third dwelling unit. So it would allow that fulsome discussion at that time with the control. The only one concern that I have, and for me, looking at Ward 3, I have a concern with the recommendation for the parking in this report that states just one parking space for each dwelling. So there'd be one for the primary, one for the second dwelling unit, and one for the third dwelling unit. And I just feel that that is not enough. That could create more situations, especially in intense wards, such as Ward 3, where you're going to have more on-street parking and more, complaints by residents. And I do have a recommendation, a slight amendment to increase that parking on this when we do go to a vote that will be brought forward for council's consideration.
Okay, but you're not putting that forward now in case there was further discussion on this before you put forward the amendment, because then the
correct
only be on
just to let council know that that was one concern that I had, was the parking. That I find it's too restrictive.
Is there other questions or comments from anyone? And then if not, then we can maybe ask Councillor Rosati if she is a seconder, and then we can talk about the amendment. Councillor Rosati, do you have a seconder for your amendment?
I'm looking for a seconder to put it on the, if you want to. Thank you, Councillor Nickel. So what this does, this changes the report from to allow 2 parking spaces for the primary residence and then 1 parking space for the secondary. So so that if you have a third dwelling unit, you're required to have 4 parking spaces, but allows some flexibility for a second dwelling unit. So it doesn't change that, but because I feel that is better. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a problem, because if you have three units, you have 2 people, say, in your primary, then you're renting out, you have a second unit, you have 1 person there, you have a third unit, they have 2 cars, you're already up to 5. So this allows 4 parking spaces for a third dwelling unit, and they can fluctuate it and float it however they need.
Questions or comments on the amendment? Councillor Van Berkel.
Thank you, Your Worship. But I hear where you're coming from, but most of these people have double garages, and they are considered as parking spaces. So just 2 cars can go in the garage and 2 outside in the driveway.
Yeah, and to me, that's why I think the amendment's reasonable, because somebody could apply and their garage could be jam-packed with ATVs and snowmobiles and boats and everything, but they could still count those as 2 parking spots. Is that correct?
That's my request, yes.
Mr. Petikainen, is that correct, what I said? If they have a 2-car garage, but it's packed full of storage, they can still count that as 2 of their parking spots?
Yes, Your Worship. That was my take on it.
Yes, Your Worship. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on the amendment? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a bit of concern with the amendment in terms of the amount of, I think under this bylaw that there has to be a certain amount of natural landscaping and that there may be, it may draw into some conflict that's, they may not be able to do that if you have to have 5 as opposed to 4. So I think what you may end up having is that we may have to reduce the amount of landscaping, and then it looks like a giant parking lot out in front of somebody's house, which, you know, from a street aesthetic point of view, doesn't look very good. So I'm not 100% sure that I'm totally behind this amendment. I understand what it's for, but I think it conflicts with the natural component of the front yard.
Thank you. Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you. And just for clarification, Councillor Waters, it's so if they had needed 5 parking spots, all they have to require is 4. And then, so it's not increasing it to 5, it's increasing it to 4 if you have a 3rd dwelling unit. It doesn't change anything for the 2nd dwelling unit requirements. It's just if you're having a 3rd dwelling unit. And as Councillor Van Berkel pointed out, and our mayor, if you have a garage, that's 1 parking space. So you need to empty the garage and that's a parking space, and you have 2 more in your driveway or 3. It's a total of 4 is only required. You don't require 5 or 6.
Could I just ask staff to speak to our zoning bylaw about how much of your front lawn can be driveway?
Through Your Worship, or it's 40% of the front yard needs to be maintained as landscaped open space. So if you have a narrow property, you can only create parking that's within that, while still maintaining that 40% landscaped open space requirement.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on the amendment? Councillor Nicol.
Thank you, Worship. I didn't see the amendment before, but I'm happy that Councillor Orsatti brought this forward. I'm thinking about this. Clearly, we still live in a recreational community, and changing, if we're going to put 3 units on 1 property, I can't see an issue with having 4 parking spaces dedicated for that. I think that's automatic. I would say that most of the places, probably in the Acona area, maybe not so much here in the Guildford or Cookstown or Churchill areas, will have 3 to 4 cars in the lot already, or parking in that area. So, and that's not including the recreational units. So this makes perfect sense to have 4 units, 4 parking spots for 3 units, because there's definitely going to be a need for more than that anyway. So I thank Councillor Orsatti for bringing this forward, and happy to second this and move forward on that.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Seeing none, so we'll take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's carried. And now the motion as amended. Final questions or comments? I have a couple. I just want to say, first of all, that when we went through this the first time and we talked about 2nd dwellings, everybody thought we were going to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, and every neighborhood would be overrun. And in fact, since 2014, there's been 78 registered 2nd units. And 80% of the people surveyed say that their intended purpose is for a family member. And the only other comment I'd like to make is, and this has become so apparent since COVID, is I used to get a lot of calls about troubles with neighbors. I still get a few, but I've gotten more calls in the last couple of months about people who just don't have a place to live. That the owner of they're a tenant in a home. The landlord has said, that they're moving in, so they have to leave. And these people are trying to find a place to live, and the rents have gone up 3 times what they were before. So I'm very, very conscious of that. And it's really hard to hear some of these stories, people talking about wanting to move into a trailer. So it's, I think the More Homes, More Choice Act, although it was passed long before the pandemic, I think has come about at a good time. Seeing no more comments or questions, all in favor of the motion as amended? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Council. Next is our RISE recommendation. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to rise out of Committee of the Whole back into Council? Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Arsati, all those in favor? That is carried. And consideration of adoption of our one item that we discussed in Committee of the Whole. That would be moved by Councillor Ices and seconded by Councillor Waters. All those in favor? That is carried. And next is notices of motion for which notice has been given. And we have one of those this evening. And so this is the motion that will be on the June 23rd agenda for people to, for us to debate, but for people, if we could maybe make sure this gets out in the media, if I could be so bold, because it wasn't printed on tonight's agenda, and I don't want people to feel surprised that this just came out of nowhere. So I want to make sure that there's lots of discussion and engagement with the public on this, because I just want to make sure that we don't look like we're passing it without that engagement. But people have 3 weeks to dive in and get lots of engagement on this, and I encourage all council members to also share it with their constituents and on social media. And moving on is announcements. Who has announcements for this evening? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to mention that the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority is announcing they're nominating environmental champions for the Conservation Awards. And so if you know anyone who you think is deserving of that, they can go into the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority website and download the application. Some of the categories for the awards are a healthy water champion, a healthy land champion, a healthy community champion, the Ernie Crossland Young Conservationist Awards for young people, and the George R. Richards Award of Honor. So if you know anyone in your community that is deserving of these awards, please go to Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, download the application and apply on that person's behalf. Thank you.
Councillor Waters, I think that you should be nominated for every one of those awards. I think we could tick the box on every one, but I don't think that would be a conflict of
I think so. I think so.
But you are our environmental champion, that's for sure. Other announcements? I have one, and I can't believe I'm the first one to say it, but the farmers market opens tomorrow. Can't wait. 1 o'clock tomorrow in the south parking lot at the IRC. So looking forward to that season starting. And then I have one other announcement. So I'd like to ask Director Peg if she wouldn't mind turning her video on if she's so inclined. You don't have to, Director Peg, I won't force you, but I just wanted to see your smiling face, because tonight I'd like to acknowledge that this is Amanda's last council meeting for a member of our senior management team. And Amanda has been a dedicated member of the town of Innisfil for the past 12 years and will be leaving us, sadly, on June the 16th. I'm going to have to talk to Mayor Saunderson up there in Collingwood, because I don't know. But I have to say that I do think that I'm just so proud of Amanda. Amanda started out with us as a co-op student. And 12 years later, she's departing us to take a role as an executive director, customer and corporate services with the town of Collingwood. So just a great opportunity. But she's led an accomplished career, which has led her to deserve this great opportunity. In the recent years, Amanda has led our people and talent team, and most recently, she's led the review on shared services across our One Town, One Team. She's been instrumental in the creation of our HR master plan, enhancing our union relations, partnerships, supporting the streamlining of service delivery models, and living the town's culture of having the freedom to be one's best self, belong, and excel. And I just feel like, I think you wrote those words, Amanda. We are sad to see you leave. However, we're so excited to watch as you take this next step in your career. And I just wanted to take a moment to recognize you and wish you certainly all the best and give you an opportunity to, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mayor Dolan, Deputy Mayor Davidson, members of council. It has been an extreme honor and privilege to serve the community of Innisfil for over a decade. When I started in Innisfil, my son actually had just turned 2, and in the coming months, he's turning 15. So it's amazing how quickly time flies. I love Innisfil. I love our staff. I am so proud of each and every one of them and the things that we've accomplished together over the years. I can't say enough how thankful I am to this council and the councils before for the trust that you've instilled upon me in various roles. As Mayor Dolan mentioned, I started as a co-op student right fresh at a Georgian college and have grown my career in Innisfil. And for that, I will be forever grateful. And I thank you for that. As I end this chapter with Innisfil, it's definitely with mixed emotions, but I am excited to work alongside CAO Skinner in Collingwood and serve that council in a very vibrant community. So thank you so much, council, and I trust when we get our new CAO in seat over the coming months that that individual will appreciate your guidance and understand and see the full potential of our staff. So thank you so much for everything over the years, and I'm sure we will keep in touch in some way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Pegg. You will be missed, but I'm so glad you're staying in Simcoe County, so you're not too far away. And I look forward to crossing paths with you, and I know you'll do great things in Collingwood. And I look forward to reading about them, all the wonderful things that you're going to be doing there. Any other members of council have any comments? Seeing none, then we'll close by asking all of town staff if they wanted to turn their camera on. And as we do our confirming bylaw, which is moved by Councillor Ices and seconded by Deputy Mayor Davidson. All those in favor? That is carried. And thank everybody for being here this evening. We'll ask for a mover and a seconder to adjourn at 8:12. Woohoo, it's still light out. How's that? Councillor Nicol and Councillor Fowler. And before I call the vote for the vote, I'll let you know we do have a special council meeting planned for the 16th and then our regular council meeting the week after, but you get next Wednesday off. So all in favor of the recommendation? That's carried. Thanks everyone. Thanks to staff and thanks to everybody who stuck with us tonight on the YouTube channel. Very much appreciated. Take care and good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Night.
Night.
Night.